my own passion has been a lot around open education and essentially because you look around, there is a movement, but a fear that it'll pass us by like other movements, and if we don't choose to do something collectively about it. Open technology, essentially our thing is that content and tools can be shared. That's the open technology. Open content is that good resources can be adopted and adapted. And open knowledge, the main thing over there is beyond content, beyond applications, because you're calling them education resources, there's a lot of tacit knowledge, that makes educational content, right? How do you share that? It really allows you to, at least the opportunity to intelligently combine physical virtual experiences, situated virtual experiences, formal, non-formal, curricular, co-curricular experiences, and the nature of openness is that it renders these things much more possible. It's not that these things could not be done before, but you have to jump through hoops and go through convulsions to do it. Suddenly, because things are legally open, technically open, okay, and visible, the propensity to do blended kinds of things and boundarylessness, and I keep making this point, boundarylessness not in terms of geographical boundaries, but boundarylessness in terms of disciplinary boundaries, things that, and so OKI, for instance, the Open Knowledge Initiative, I was a PI. It was to build a technical architecture for interoperability, so that I was given some amount of money to build an open source system. I went back and said, I'm not interested in building an open source system, but interested in building an open architecture so that open source proprietary systems can interoperate, right? And because it's about choice, and you want choice not only at the level of applications that educators might use, but choice at the level of people who are making service and infrastructure decisions, and you don't want either of these parties to be paying a high, and this is for planning. It's an important architectural notion. You don't want either of these parties to be paying a steep price because they want to exercise choice, right? So you want to, and in academic institutions particularly, choice is a very important thing because, it's the localities. Academia's excellence is derived from being a cottage industry. Anything that goes to militate against that is bound to fail. But, typically you say that, in higher education particularly, and this was the Knowledge Commission's problem also. Oh, if you're going to scale education, then the quality will decrease, So you'll find that there is a very, very insidious relationship, that people will say between exclusivity and quality. They'll say, oh, the typical triangle, because these vectors, you say, are immutable. Because if you say, well, let's say I put lots of people in a class, quality is going to go down. Let's say I do a lot of, build expensive resources, good materials, the cost is going to go up, And what we see and what we, not just loosely conjecture, but what we assert pretty strongly is that this combination of open education and technology can actually lead to where you can have small cost, very high access, and very high quality, right? And that's the thing. And then there are things, does it allow new aspirations? Now, when I hear the proposal that is being talked about here, that's new aspiration. So exciting new aspiration. And so I think it provides a lot of affordances for those kinds of aspirations. So then, but the question is a readiness question, and being who we are and how we've done our business of education, what do we need to do? For instance, if you're going to do that self-testing, how do you accumulate credits? How do you translate that into a system like that? Those are the issues that speak to readiness. There is cultural readiness. One of the things that I talk a lot about, and I can assure you this won't be the only time you hear about it, that the paradigm that we have operated on is one of scarcity, scarce resources. All our educational models are built on scarcity, scarce contact hours, scarce teachers, scarce real estate, right? So if you look at the entire situated model, learning model, it's situated because all those things are scarce. And what this blowing up of open education and networks offer is abundance. So you say, hey, content is abundant. Look at your social networks. Relationships are abundant. Okay, suddenly it is shifting you to think about abundance. So on social networks, peer-to-peer education, I'm doing a lot. I mean, whether it is through Facebook or chat or email, I am building support relationships, peer learning relationships, all on the network. If we start doing that education. So you're building a lot of networks, even this tutoring on the net, So you're building a lot of informal relationships, and there's a manageability problem. I'll talk about readiness because there's an abundance of content and abundance of relationship, but how do you make sure that they are productive and coherent, so that whatever learning experience that you want happens, okay? Not that they are bad, but they might not be able to be packaged coherently for something. So the other thing in this readiness factor I keep talking about, I don't want to give the impression that everything about what we have right now is screwed, because over the years, look at the previous conversation, a lot of it builds on some successes. So there are lots of invariants of quality. We talk about this a lot at MIT, and I say, okay, what are the invariants? What led to open courseware was recognizing that what we really do well is have great students, okay, and have them interact with other great students and great faculty. And that's why when people said, what do we do with the internet? What do we do to the internet? We say, well, we don't do distance education. We don't know how to do it. We don't know do online education very well. We do a lot of stuff online. So we said, okay, the only thing we do well is this, right? Let's take a picture of it and put it out there. That's what is open courseware, okay? But where I'm saying is there are some invariants. If you talk about undergraduate education, the 17-year-old is an invariant. The going proposition is, if you think about network-enabled open education as what contemporary distance education is, it doesn't have to be a second-class citizen. This is not for the rest of us. What you're saying actually is that it becomes a central modality by which you deliver quality education. The boundarylessness part, is the sort of the, and this is something we were talking about, Poonam, before, when I said big problems, they naturally lend themselves to think across disciplines, so one of the things that we have started doing with open courseware is indexing all the courses that touch on energy. Energy is a big, and so that people can start seeing all the courses that link with energy, And so now you would say, what has this got to do with open? When it was not open, people didn't know what was in the curriculum, in the syllabus. In fact, that the biggest advantage of, besides knowing the number of courses that we have in this thing, is that our faculty actually know what their colleagues are teaching. So at least have some sense when this kid comes up and says, I've done these prerequisites, what it actually means. When you talk about undergraduates and school children, that empowerment is extremely important, because you're not, what you're trying to do, I think, and I'm getting preachy over here, is you really want to make them feel like researchers, think like researchers, act like researchers. We say this somewhat glibly about shifting from teaching to learning, because suddenly this thing brings about, starts accommodating a whole different nuances to learning. Anytime, anywhere, you say, you can come in. So the focus is all on learning. And part of, when you're starting an institution, the challenge is, can you package some of those learning experiences and attach credits or some, some proxy for credentialing, and because a lot of learning things, one experience, it's getting factored, and then it's serving a variety of learning experiences. Because even with open courseware, when we put it out, suddenly we saw spikes at one point, spikes in the hits. And at that time, the .com bust was on. So a lot of folks were going for knowledge updates. They'd come and say, oh, I got time now, I'll go, do that learning on my own time, that kind of stuff, So, I think interesting times, some stuff to build, and where to frame this, maybe to talk about some of these things just to get people,